Okay, good morning. I never cease to be amazed by my small ears. I'm amazed I can wear anything over them. It's wonderful to see everyone today. Thank you. I know you could have stayed in a food coma from the Thanksgiving holiday, but thank you for being here. I appreciate those of you who are visiting us from out of town. It could be that you went online and said Buddhist Centers, Columbus, Ohio, because you're visiting family. I don't know. But appreciate you being here because we're here for you. And we enjoy opening our doors every week and having people come and sit with us and meditate with us. And really appreciate your bringing yourselves and your aspirations and goodness to this place. So thank you for that. My name's Kathy, and I work here. And today I'm giving what I hope will be a brief Dharma talk. And the topic is next level gratitude. And the reason I picked this particular topic is because of the Thanksgiving holiday this past week. And it does cause reflection. We do reflect on a lot of things during the Thanksgiving holiday. And so it's kind of nice to get I guess what you might call a Buddhist take on gratitude and its place in our spiritual life. So in this way, so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Before we get started, though, it's always good to start with intention, because that's what determines how well things go. And if we bring a good motivation to the endeavor, it will go well. That's what has been shown to me in my life. So we start with the prayer of taking refuge. We take refuge in the Buddha as the teacher, the Dharma as the path, and the Sangha as the community. If this is a prayer with which you're unfamiliar, you don't need to recite it. You can just listen. But we'll be reciting it 2 times in English and then chanting it once in Tibetan. With this, we'll make the aspiration that this class go well for the benefit of ourselves and others. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the assembly most excellent, I take refuge until I reach enlightenment. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I achieve enlightenment for the sake of all beings. And now in Tibetan. O sanje chudang soji chonamla jang chu pardu dani kyap suji daji jinso jibe sunam ki drola penshir sanje druparsho. Okay, thank you. I'll recite a short prayer of my own, and then we'll begin. O Palden Sawelama Rinpoche, Dagi Chiwar Pe Meden Shala, Kadrin Jembo Gorne Che Sumte, Kursum Tugging Udrup Sal to Soul. Okay, thank you. Okay, to begin, of course, gratitude is part of any good self-care plan. Most folks today understand the importance of gratitude in creating an internal environment that is about inspiration, about looking forward in life, and about celebrating one's own goodness. So we understand the value of gratitude. We have a lot to be thankful for. No matter what we've been through in our lives, first of all, and we've all been through something, no matter what we've been through in our lives, here we are. We have 2 feet on the ground, and we have our capacities, we have our mental and physical abilities, and we have the potential to use those mental and physical abilities to be of benefit to ourselves and others. So on balance, even though we may have been through a lot in our lives, we're still here and we're still capable of benefiting ourselves and others. And so that's a good place to begin when we're thinking about gratitude. And then we also have the many good things that come in life from circumstance, such as the people around us. We can be grateful for the people around us who support us and are helpful. We can be grateful to so many in our lives, from the past, the present, and even the future, who are there for us and support us in our lives. And we can be also grateful for our current state of health. It's even if it's not that great, we are still able to move around and to make our needs known and to have the capacity to do activities that are of benefit to ourselves and others. So we have a lot to be grateful for. And because of this gratitude, the teachings of the Buddha say that we need to make use of these faculties of body and mind that we have. In fact, there are 4 contemplations that are done traditionally in Tibetan Buddhism to help us get on the meditation seat when we're thinking, maybe not today. And interesting, yes, one of them is impermanence, that the fact that the clock is ticking and that time is moving away and that we're running out of time to practice Dharma and so on. Yes, impermanence is a good motivator. And yes, reflecting on action, cause, and result, or the truth of karma, that's also a good motivator. And an understanding that everything we think, do, and say makes an impression on who we are and how we become, that we're creating ourselves moment by moment, day by day, minute by minute, moment by moment. That's a good motivator. And then lastly, the defects of worldly accomplishment. Yeah, even a good day in this world that the Buddha called samsara, or cyclic existence. Even a good day in samsara you're still in samsara, so you may need to do some Dharma practice to attain what we call a Buddhahood, or maybe we'll just call it escape velocity from samsara. However we term it, all of these things are good motivators, but I have to be honest. My favorite of the 4 thoughts that turn the mind toward Dharma is not impermanence, it's not karma, it's not the defects of samsara. It's the first one, which is the precious human life. It really, for some reason, that one really inspires me more than anything else. And it's mostly because of the very first thing that I said, which was, we've all been through something and here we are. Because that's proof to us that change is possible in life and that we are capable of initiating and guiding that change, nurturing that change, and making it happen. And so the very fact that we're still here and have been able to surmount the challenges and problems in our lives, even if we did so in a way we're not so proud of, we at least surmounted those challenges and are here now, today, able to do more things that are helpful to ourselves and others. So that is, for me, the foundation of everything, is that I am able to do things that bring me closer and closer to Buddhahood. But then I said, okay, so like that's sort of first level gratitude. First level gratitude. Can we go farther? And the reason I bring this up is because I read something that my teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, spoke a number of years ago that kind of challenged me that there was yet another level of gratitude I could get to. And I said, man, I got to share this with other people because it puts gratitude in a whole different light. But before we get to his advice, I need to give a commercial for for basic Buddhist books. I know this book, it looks a little thicker than most books that you would ever want to like take home and read. So you don't need to do that because I'm just going to give you a quick summary. This book was written in the 12th century. It's called The Jewel Ornament of Liberation. And it's by the 12th century master Gampopa. Many of you will never have heard of Gampopa, but that's okay. I mean, you know, he did live. He's an actual person. He did live. He lived in Tibet in the 12th century. He was a physician, and his wife died in an epidemic, and he couldn't save her. And it was too much for him. It just like overwhelmed him. And it wasn't that he gave up medicine exactly, but he knew that he needed to do more with his life. So he decided to become a monastic. And part of the reason for this was because of a deathbed promise that he made to his wife. She said, "Don't marry again. Promise me you will not marry again." And I think from his point of view, probably the only way he could keep that promise to his wife was to become monastic, and because monastics don't marry. So at least he could say, "Honey, I tried." So he became a monastic, and like a physician, very driven, he became the very best monastic. He was very observant of all the monastic vows. He didn't drink, you know, none of the things that you would associate with a dissolute lifestyle. You know, he was pretty much of a straight arrow. Until he heard about the great guru of the mountains, Milarepa. Now, you may not have heard of Milarepa either. Don't worry about it. This is more ancient history. Milarepa lived crossing the 11th and 12th centuries. His story is also fascinating. He was wealthy, then his father died and he lost everything, and then he was put into servitude to his father's brother. Anyhow, it's like a telenovela. It's kind of like, it's like a soap opera. And his mother wants revenge, and then Milarepa gets revenge, and for her, and then he gets thrown out of the community because killing people is kind of against the law. And so he went into the mountains until he met his guru, Marpa. So I know the story's getting longer, sorry. But this is what lineage means. Lineage means that the author of this book, Gampopa, learned the Dharma from his teacher, Milarepa, who learned his Dharma from his teacher, Marpa, who learned it from the Indian guru, Naropa, who learned it from the Indian guru, Tilopa, who had a vision of the Buddha. And this vision of the Buddha gave him essential instructions for how to attain Buddhahood quickly through the practice of meditation that is now called Mahamudra. That's our tradition, that's our lineage, that's our family heirloom. And it's what all of us end up doing eventually if we dive in and start practicing Dharma here. But let's go back to Gampopa. His wife has died. He promised her he wouldn't marry. Then he becomes a monastic, becomes the very best monastic he possibly can become. And then he hears about Milarepa, a crazy wisdom teacher who is not monastic, who teaches through song, and that's a whole nother story we'll have to tell you sometime. he teaches, he was sort of the folk hero of his area. He taught through song and through example, and so forth and so on. And he was widely believed, like his gurus before him, to be a fully enlightened being. So Gampopa hears about Milarepa and decides, I've not become an enlightened being yet. Maybe if I go see Milarepa, I'll get enlightened. Maybe that'll do it for me. So, because being the very best monk didn't exactly work yet, so I think I better check into this. So he hears about Milarepa, and he goes to seek for him in the mountains. And he encounters him, actually, on the road of all places, traveling from one retreat place to the other. And he's by the side of the road. Because it's a special Buddhist holiday, he's having a Ganachakra, or a religious feast. And there's, food, and there's actually some of the Tibetan barley beer called chang, and so forth. And so it's a special occasion. And he has done a religious blessing over all of the food. And Gampopa encounters Milarepa, and Milarepa hands him a cup of this barley beer and says, "Here, drink this." And Gampopa says, "Excuse me, you haven't noticed I'm a monk. I can't drink. I can't drink." And Milarepa just looks at him and says, "Look, if you want my teaching, drink this." So he's like, okay, so he drinks it. And that began the beautiful friendship between Gampopa and Milarepa that culminated in Gampopa's attainment of Buddhahood, and then his writing of this book, The Jewel Ornament of Liberation. And so Gampopa is a special person in that he united two streams of practice into one. He united two streams of practice into one. He was a monastic, and he continued to practice his monasticism. And he brought with him his, what I'll call book learning Buddhism. Book learning Buddhism, and he joined it with Milarepa's yogic mantra Mahamudra tradition. These two streams of monasticism and mind training and Buddhist Tantra and mantra practice. So he joined those two into one and created the Kagyu lineage as we know it today. So for Gampopa, he needed to talk about the entire path. And so it was popular at that time to write small encyclopedias. It was popular to try to summarize all the sutras, because there are literally hundreds of sutras, and you cannot study them all. So especially if you are working with a group of people who are largely illiterate. So what the Tibetan monastic scholars did was they read all of the sutras, digested them, and repackaged them in these teachings, like the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, and showed a graded path. Like, if you try to read the sutras, you have no idea how to practice. I mean, this sutra says this sutra says this sutra, and they all say, oh, by the way, these are all the most important things. And so hundreds of sutras saying that hundreds of things are very important. So what Gampopa and other monastic scholars in Tibet did was that they took all of these and digested them and put them into A, B, C, D, and so on method of practicing, so that an average person who was illiterate could get this book read to them, or could study with someone who had studied the book, who could go over it with them, and then all of the monastics who studied and learned to read could get this book and read it and then go help people. The word ornament, by the way, I learned this from a translator. The word ornament, whenever you ever see the word ornament in a Tibetan Buddhist book, it means it's chock full of scripture. That the Buddha's words are like this page has 5 four, and this one has four. There are quotations. These 2 pages have like 8 different quotes from the Buddhist scripture in it. So they use scripture to back up their assertions and to back up their advice. Now, you might say, why am I talking about a 12th century book when I'm talking about gratitude? I'm sorry, it does take me a little while to explain things. This 12th century book said something very important in the very first chapter. In the very first chapter, Gampopa starts his path. Like, do you want to know how to become an enlightened Buddha? Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and then the final chapter is Buddhahood. So you want to get through this book, right? So chapter 1 is, again, my gratitude list begins with chapter 1 because in it he says, Buddhahood is within each individual in the same way butter is inside every glass of whole milk. In other words, it's intrinsic. It's intrinsic. It's part of us. And it cannot be removed except through churning. You churn the milk and it becomes butter. And it produces the butter. So if sentient beings have Buddha nature, what is it that brings their Buddha nature out? But practice, meditation, and prayer, and study, and so on. That we become Buddhas because we apply the teachings to ourselves. That's how we become Buddha. But it's inherent within each person, and what this means, the implications of this are enormous. This means that no matter how far down we get, how confused we are, we have Buddha nature. We have the potential to wake up to our own goodness. We have the potential to wake up to our own wisdom, wake up to our own compassion, wake up to our own capacity to benefit both ourselves and others. This basic Buddha nature is within every single person. And it's also within every single sentient creature. Sentience, one way to define sentience is that a being that knows it is alive. A being that knows it is alive. So many of you may not be familiar with documentary films. I love them. They're fun to watch. There's a wonderful one called The Parrots of Telegraph Hill. It's kind of old, but it's fun to watch if you want to watch an inspiring story about birds. It's about a colony of parrots that lives in San Francisco. And one of the naturalists who looks after the parrots of Telegraph Hill, near the end of the film, he says people think of these birds, and he doesn't use these exact words. This is just a paraphrase of what he says. A lot of people think that, birds and other creatures are just dumb animals. They're just dumb animals. But he said, these creatures, they know they are alive, and they want to stay alive. And they know when they have pain, and they want to not have pain. They know when they're hungry. They know when they have needs. And so I don't see, his point was, I don't see why we don't respect them. And so I think this is really fascinating. So in a way, you could say even these parrots have Buddha nature. Now, maybe they're not going to be able to sit on a perch and meditate and become Buddhas, but I'm not leaving the idea out. The possibility is still there. And someday I will tell you the story about the meditating birds of the 16th Karmapa. The 16th Karmapa did not live in the 12th century. He just died in 1981, and I met him. And he gave me a small song sparrow that actually died in a state of meditation. I know, that's weird, but it did. But I'll tell you that story another day. But the 16th Karmapa, like the 3rd Karmapa before him, was renowned for being able to speak to and talk to animals, birds especially. So he taught them how to meditate. I know, it's a strange world we live in. But that's a story for another day, because I'm still on the idea of gratitude. I'm still all about it. And this chapter about Buddha nature and about the fact we all have it, and it's an intrinsic part of us, hopefully is a cause for gratitude for everyone who's here. I never will forget when Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche told us for the first time that we had Buddha nature. He didn't go through this whole rigmarole telling me about Gampopa in the 12th century and the story and all of that. He didn't say that. He just spoke from a position of, shall we say, inspired authority. When he said words, we kind of like, we kind of like said, yeah. I don't know if it was like a Jedi mind thing or what, but when he would speak, we would go, wow, that's cool. So he said, each of us has within us a spark of goodness and a source of vast and wonderful well-being. He said, if you only knew who you really were and what you were really capable of, he said, you would be astonished and amazed. And we were all just kind of like, wow, really? We have that? We have that spark of goodness and wisdom and compassion inside of us? Wow. And then the next thought was, oh, that means that this Buddhist thing is not just like a hobby. I can't just be a hobby Buddhist anymore. I have to like be a Buddhist? Because I have this Buddha nature, I should probably do something with it. And so this is why I love to tell the story of Rinpoche and how he convinced a bunch of wild hippies in the 70s that we had Buddha nature and said, you know, it'd be good if you meditated a little. Pretty cool. And I'll talk about one more of Gampopa's points, and then I'll get to the next level of gratitude. In the second chapter, Gampopa basically says he names 5 different types of individuals. But among those 5, 3 stand out, so we'll just go with those 3. First one is, he called them families. Families. So the first family was the disconnected family. And he said, these folks maybe don't have any experience of Dharma from a previous lifetime. And this whole Dharma thing and enlightenment thing and wisdom and compassion thing is kind of new to them, and they're kind of like, nah, think not. No, I don't think so. He said they have as much inspiration to practice meditation as a dog has to eat grass like a cow. Dogs eat grass occasionally, but they don't feast on it. So the disconnected family are people who kind of like, Dharma, sounds like a bunch, as one of my husband's friends once said, sounds like a scam to me. I thought that was pretty good. He said, yeah, it sounds like Buddhism, it sounds like a scam to me. Anyway. The second kind of family, I know, right? The second kind of family is called the hearer, H-E-A-R-E-R, the hearer family. And these are people who understand the basic teaching of the Buddha that samsara, this world we're living in, is kind of like cyclic suffering, a lot of it. And they need to like transcend the cycle of suffering that's in samsara. And in fact, Gampopa says they're actually a little scared of samsara and they just want to get out. They don't particularly want to take anybody with them. They just want to get out. And so they engage in very isolated places and deep meditation, striving to, through meditation, go beyond a state of suffering, which he said can be obtained, but it's not Buddhahood. And then somebody asked the Buddha, well, wait a minute. If these hearers can attain a state that's beyond suffering but not Buddhahood, why would the Buddha teach anybody to follow that kind of a path? And the Buddha answered that it was because there are different kinds of individuals. And he had to be respectful of the individual who just wanted to escape. And he said that these beings, these hearers, who are only interested in their own escape from samsara but don't really necessarily want to help anybody, he said they do attain a state of non-suffering, but then they kind of are in stasis for a very, very long time. And I asked my teacher one time, I said, what happens to these people? Does a bodhisattva, a person who's going for full Buddhahood, come and tap them on the shoulder and say, "Psst, there's more"? And he said, yeah, something like that. And in this book, it explains that light from the Buddha's form touches them in their meditation. And then the Buddha appears, and it kind of wakes them up from their deep meditation. And then the Buddha appears to them and says, oh, practitioners, please follow me, there's more, and so forth and so on. And so it really, I didn't read the book. I hadn't read the book yet, and I said, I just guessed, Anyway, it was fun. So this is the second thing that Gampopa talks about that was inspiring to me, is that there are these 5 types of individuals. And we've talked about 2 of the 3 that I'm going to mention. But then there's the final family, and it's called the loving kindness family. Sometimes it's called Maha, which means great, and Yana, which means vehicle. But it's really the loving kindness family. These are people who are naturally loving. They're like the kids who try to save the spiders from getting crushed, They have this like natural kindness and natural love. Even as kids, they have this sort of natural feeling of wanting to benefit others. Maybe they're a little tender-hearted, and but they want to benefit others. And he said of these 3 kinds of individuals, the Mahayana family, this loving kindness family, is the family that is most disposed and open to hearing about Dharma. And so I'm hoping that by introducing this 12th century idea to you, this might give you another idea about gratitude. Because what my teacher said that kind of blew me out of the water when I was reading it this past week was that he said, you have no idea how many lives you have lived before this one. The Buddha taught that we all have had previous lives. And he said, you have lived lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, and through those lifetimes, he said, you've come into contact with the Dharma. And not only that, he said, you have been kind to people. You have saved people's lives in previous lifetimes. You have saved animals. You have accomplished so much goodness. You fed people who were hungry. You helped people who had nothing. You went outside of yourself and beyond yourself to accomplish great good. And because of the teachings of karma, this good karma that you've generated from all of these amazing things that you've done in your previous lives have culminated in you being here now. So this precious human life that we have now, according to Rinpoche, was because of all the great goodness we've accomplished in the past. And it's like this is the fruition of all of that goodness. And he said, and because of that goodness, you are now in a position to see, hear, and learn and practice the Dharma. And he said, don't waste the opportunity. He said, take hold of this opportunity and use it to benefit yourself and others. And so that just kind of blew me away. I actually can thank the many, many previous me's. I was somebody else before I was this, and I can thank him or her, and then I can thank they and them who were in the past, and they and them who were in the past, and they and them who were in the past. So many in the past. I can say, thank you. I'm happy. I'm happy to be here because of you. And I'm happy that I met my teachers, and I'm happy that I practice meditation, and I'm happy that I am able to practice Dharma even just a little bit, even if I'm kind of imperfect at it. To me, that's what next level gratitude is being able to look back and realize how much suffering and difficulty and yet how much goodness brought me here today, talking to you. It's just an unbelievable cascade of amazing things, one amazing thing after another. And it's something that even then kind of blew me away, because knowing I have Buddha nature, at first I felt, oh my gosh, I have to do something with this. I can't be a hobby Buddhist anymore. But yet, knowing that this precious human life was so hard won, so it was won after so much hardship, then I got to do something with it. I got to try to make use of it in some way to help beings. When I first became a Buddhist, my mother was just not having it. My mom, just not having it. Just not having it. She's like, I raised you kids Catholic, and this is what you do? And so I had to say, yeah, Ma, about that. Really appreciate my Catholic upbringing. Really appreciate it. I had good training, good education, got me into college, whole thing. But yeah, I met a Buddhist monk who embodied everything that I thought I wanted to become. So yeah, she still wasn't having it. But it wasn't until a couple years before she passed away, after I came out of 3-year retreat. She also didn't like that. Like, this Buddhism, it kind of sounds like evil to me. It's taking you away from your family for 3 years. I just can't feature that. I can't figure that out. And I said, Mom, this is just how they do it. I mean, if there was another way to do it, I'd do it that way, but this is the only way to do it. She's like, okay. She wouldn't speak to me for days when I told her. She hung up the phone and stopped talking to me. So anyway, and that was tough. But right before I got out of retreat, I got a letter from her. And she says, okay, I think I figured it out. It's like, thanks, Mom. I think I figured it out. She said, when you were a little girl, you wanted to help people. You became a Girl Scout, and you did all of these things. And so I guess this is kind of like that. And then she said, and I had a dream the other night. And I'm like, okay. So she says, she writes all this in the letter. She said, I had a dream the other night. I was in church, and then the doors of the church opened and all these people came in. And the lady next to me says, who are those people? And I told her, oh, those are the people from the 3-year retreat, and that's my daughter. So in a way, she had worked it out in her own being. She had worked it out for herself. She needed to have a way to work it out for herself so that it was okay, and so that she didn't have to think that she did a bad job. Because, it's a mom thing. Only moms will understand this. Like, I did a bad job. This is what she was thinking, obviously, right? So then she was able to let go of that and have some feelings of gratitude herself. So I'm hoping that from this talk, you will take home the idea that you have some gratitude, not just for this life, but for all your previous lives. And you can, If you have something good and wonderful happening in your life, you can say, way to go, previous me, you know? And if something negative is happening in your life, you don't have to say, boo, previous me. You can just say, I understand. It's hard to be human. Anyway, because of the bad karma, the whole thing about bad karma. I can just say, well, here we are. But, and I'm hoping that what this does is it helps you get on the cushion. If you have a day when you get up in the morning and it's like, oh, cushion, just not. I'm not into it. But I hope it will help you get on the cushion, and it will help you to stay on the cushion and to just keep on keeping on, keep coming back to your cushion and keep coming back to your meditation and keep coming back to your Buddha nature and finding out more about it and its capacity. I mean, after all, Rinpoche said, if you only knew who you really were and what you were capable of, you'd be astonished. So I'm still waiting to find all that out. So we'll stop here in terms of the presentation. I appreciate your kindness in listening and, and all that. I really appreciate that. But you might have some comments or a response or a question. So we have 2 question microphones. And if you'll use the microphone, then people at home who are watching on Zoom will be able to follow what you're asking. Yes.
Hi. Good morning.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no.
So you described kind of 2 points on a line that you followed, where at one point you would have described yourself as a hobby Buddhist.
Yeah, hobby Buddhist.
And then we're encountering you today as someone who has really thrown themselves into...
I kind of dove in.
Yeah, someone who's dove in. And of course, there are these sort of formal ways to do that. And you described the 3-year retreat as one big step of that. And I'm wondering, kind of between those 2 points, what could we describe that exists between them? And for someone who may never do the 3-year retreat, may not become a monastic, may not become a teacher, but who wants to experience the butter.
Yeah, it's so true, right? Yeah, and I think that this particular book, The Jewel Ornament, although it is a little hard to read, I do not recommend it for beginners. There is a short version, like a compilation or the Reader's Digest version of this is a book called Dharma Paths, Paths, Dharma Paths, and it's by our founder, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. And in that book, he tells the life story of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths. He talks about the practice of meditation, the taking of refuge as the beginning point for Buddhist practice, and then the taking of the Bodhisattva vow, which is sort of the development of the next stage of practice, this Mahayana practice, and then taking empowerment to practice mantra. So where we all begin is with meditation, because we find that meditation really works for us, it helps us. And from the formal Buddhist path part is that one begins the formal practice of a Buddhist path by taking the vow of refuge, which was given by the Buddha 2,500 years ago to his disciples, and then to theirs and theirs and theirs and theirs. And so that the lineage of the refuge vow is unbroken for 2,500 years. And that's kind of powerful just to think about all by itself. And then that happens when a person feels like they are ready to take the Buddha as their teacher, the Dharma as their path, and the Sangha as their community. Those are the 3 sources of Buddhist refuge. You might call the 3 jewels or the 3 refuges as our version of a higher power, if you want to put it in terminology. It's a more secular terminology. So that's, I think, where most people begin, is by taking the vow of refuge. And then after that, they continue to study and learn about meditation and learn about the Four Noble Truths, learn about the loving kindness and compassion practices, there's a whole raft of practices that surround compassion meditation. And what my teacher told me was that learning compassion meditation really is like a pivotal moment for people who are developing as Buddhists. Refuge is great, and then learning the Four Noble Truths and so forth, that's great. But when you learn compassion meditation, he said things begin to change inside of us. And then that's really where we start to change our reactiveness. Because when you do quiet sitting meditation, you learn how to not react to the things that come up when you're meditating. And then that non-reaction gives you some more space to breathe in and to be in. And then slowly, gradually, by learning compassion meditation, you replace that selfishness with a different viewpoint, a viewpoint of love, compassion, and wisdom. And then, so while you're letting go of selfishness on the one hand, you're taking hold of this identity as a bodhisattva in training. And that actually becomes like, it becomes wall to wall over time. And it changes how we experience other people. It changes how we experience everything. And then people can go farther, and they can build on that by studying and practicing what's called Mahamudra, the Mahamudra path of learning how to meditate on mind itself, how to recognize mind and how it is. And then some people even like to practice mantra alongside of it. The whole idea of sacred outlook. I mean, it's one thing for people to tell you have Buddha nature, and it's another thing to visualize yourself as a Buddha or Bodhisattva made of light, and feeling the love, compassion, and wisdom of a Bodhisattva and reciting that Bodhisattva's mantra and name and so forth. And so these practices really are where people develop. Shamatha meditation, great foundation. Refuge vow, great foundation. The compassion practice and the Bodhisattva vow, great building, great expansion. Then the practices of mantra and Mahamudra really expands everything. Now, what I jokingly tell people about the 3-year retreat is that really the 3-year retreat is kind of for the lunatic fringe, the people who are sort of way out there. I can't say enough good things about it, but it's not for everybody. And the other thing I need to say is that I am very lucky that I had already been married for 20 years before I did the 3-year retreat. I'd already been married for 20 years, and we just celebrated our 51st anniversary this year. Anyway, that's a whole nother story I'll tell a different time. But so don't worry about 3-year retreat. Just think about, you don't have to do it. Just the weird ones on the fringe are the ones who do it. And we do it because there's something inside of us that tells us we need to. I don't know. I couldn't explain it. The minute I heard about it, I wanted to do it. Is it a setting that I didn't see? Is setting in in my being? It's like, oh, this dial is dialed toward 3-year retreat. So maybe that's what it was, that I have some sort of inner thing saying, you're going to do this. All I know is that when I saw the retreat house for the first time, I cried. I was so happy. Anyway, so refuge, meditation, compassion meditation, mantra meditation, Mahamudra, these are all, and they're all capable of bringing a person to enlightenment. Even just the practice of refuge, all by itself, is said to be able to produce Buddhahood. So we've got a lot. Now, did that cover?
Very much. Thank you.
Okay, all right,
Thank you.
Thanks for asking. Yeah. Yes, thanks. Yeah, I had asked my friend to come and share something.
She planted a question.
I
wanted
did.
everyone to know that.
I'm not afraid to. Transparency.
So we were talking earlier, and I had expressed that I had previously a lot of guilt and I just didn't like who I was. And recently, I kind of came to realize through meditation, through our talking, that previous me deserves love and gratitude too. who I was got me to where I am today. And instead of feeling all that guilt about it, one day I just realized that I need to love that person too. So, so thank you for
Yeah.
helping me realize that.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you sharing this because I feel like so many of us go through this where we feel badly about ourselves and maybe even blame ourselves for things that how could we know? You know, we did the things we did, and we did it because we thought it would bring goodness to our life, and maybe it did for like a few seconds, but then after that it wasn't very good. So I just really thank you for sharing that, because I had that kind of little glimmer myself, but I wasn't able to articulate it in the way you did. So I thank you for sharing that, because, you know, we have to like love that person who we were, and just integrate that, what we learned, we integrate that over time. Yes, hi.
Good morning. As you were talking about your progression to this current human rebirth, I'm thinking that process is really karma. I mean, the current human rebirth is the result of our past lives. And so I don't understand how you can not attribute to your current situation to your karma. I mean, I realize that they're very integrated,
Yeah.
the two things, but
I'm really glad you mentioned this, because this was exactly what I meant to imply. And if that didn't come across, then that's me. Because I really did mean to imply that karma has brought us here, and that this is the next level of gratitude, is to be grateful for the person or persons we were in previous lives, to be grateful to them for what they brought us.
well, you did express that.
Okay, but so I'm missing your point then.
Well, I just think the word karma needs to be talked about more, you know.
I hear that.
I
No,
I mean, that's my favorite thing, so.
well, and you know what? I really do appreciate you bringing this up, because, you know, the Buddha talked about it in his very first teachings. And then the opening verses of the Dhammapada, the very first collection of his advice, he talks about karma like in the third verse. You know, I mean, it starts, we are what we think, all that we are arises with our thoughts, and with our thoughts we make the world. And then, like, no, it's not even that. It's like the second stanza.
Yeah, it's the cart, you know,
Yeah.
following the oxen.
Yeah, exactly. He says, if we think, speak, and act with an impure mind, suffering follows us just as surely the wheel follows the ox that draws the cart. And then he repeats the first phrase again. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts, and with our thoughts we make the world. If we think, speak, and act with a pure, meaning unselfish, mind, happiness follows us like a shadow that's unshakable. So I feel like he lays it out, and it really actually is kind of self-evident in a way. We can see it if we reflect on it. If we don't reflect on it, then we don't see it. We don't see the connection. But if we reflect on it, this is why I'm inviting everybody to sort of like do their own little internal spiritual inventory and say, hey, you know, this being I have now, interestingly enough, and I think you and I have talked about this before, the body that we have, the body and mind that we have now, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said the Tibetans call this being that we have now, they call it the fully ripened result of all of our previous karma. So here it is, the fully ripened result. With all of the good attributes and all the negative attributes, we are it. And so the important thing now is to take this fully ripened result and make good karma for the future. This is very important. I mean, parents, you will all understand this. Parents sacrifice for their kids. They give up so many things so their kids can have things. They have a good education, they give their kids a good home to live in, they do all of these things for their kids. And then we do it for ourselves. We go to college or we go to school or we do this or we do that. We get training and then we become who we want to become. But what's so interesting is that people don't make plans for their future lives. Who does that, right? I mean, is that like thinking too far ahead? But it's not, because if this is the fully ripened result of all the previous people, then wouldn't it stand to reason that we need to do a lot of good right here, right now, so that in the future we can help more people? So I almost feel like it's like we're making a deposit for future. It's like buying one of those money market certificates and giving it to your children so that it grows money over time. So why don't we do a lot of good karma now so that who we are in a future lifetime gets even better circumstances? I mean, just think about it. Don't have to do it, but think about it. I appreciate you bringing that up.
And I have a simple question.
Sure.
Is that book available in our store for sale?
I don't, the storekeepers are not up here right now, so I can't tell you. And if it's not, you can come see me after. There are 4 copies in the library, so if you have,
Cool.
I stole this from the
Thanks.
the librarian saw me take it. I said, I'll bring it back. So yeah, but I'll tell you what, Tim, this one, it's kind of slow going, so you have to make sure you read all the footnotes and stuff. It might seem a little dry. So Dharma Paths is a little easier to read. Anyway, yeah.
Thank you for this.
Appreciate
I've
it.
noticed in my own practice, as I imagine many do, a sort of cycle, where it's
Yeah.
a week or two
Yeah.
where it's like flowing and I'm in the zone, and then a week after
We had
that.
this conversation. Yeah, uh-huh.
And I've noticed recently that the cycle or the spiral seems to be going somewhat upward, where the lows aren't quite as, low or far off the path, and the highs are,
Yeah.
feeling more,
Right.
real and genuine and meaningful. The idea you spoke of about rebirth is something I'm still learning about. And I definitely had a bit of a realization as you were talking about it. It's like, oh, wow, this is special. I need to pay attention and do something with this.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I guess I'm just wondering if you could talk a little more about the idea that, when we encounter the Dharma, it's like this is this is our karma.
Yeah.
I guess it's similar to other questions that have been asked, but
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you have any more wisdom on how I might use this realization to really get
Yeah.
excited and grounded and,
Yeah.
go to another level with things.
I really appreciate you bringing this up, because the up and down nature of Dharma practice and study, I don't know if y'all have experienced this, but I sure have. There are weeks when everything is smooth, and then weeks when everything is like it's everywhere. And this is why I think that the important thing is, I got a lot of friends in 12-step, and I love their slogans, and one of them is keep coming back. And I feel like keep coming back to practice, just keep coming back. I mean, I know they mean keep coming back to meetings, but just keep coming back to this kind of goodness. But here's what I'm thinking. In compassion meditation practice is part of a larger, study called Lojong, or mind training. Because what's happening in shamatha meditation, calm abiding meditation, just plain sitting meditation, what's happening in that is that we're learning how to let go of thoughts and let the mind rest, and let go of thoughts and let the mind rest, and we do that over and over again. But then compassion meditation comes along, and it encourages us to use use thoughts instead of just dropping them for about 5 minutes, which is all the more that the compassion practice lasts. It's very short. You imagine that you send goodness out to all sentient beings, and to yourself and to all sentient beings. That's what compassion practice is. And if you're really interested, you can also do that's on the out-breath. You send goodness to beings, and on the in-breath, then you remove their suffering and then see it dissolving in you, and it disappears. because we have Buddha nature. It just dissolves and disappears. And so you do this kind of practice, and then there's a whole framework of thinking that goes with it. And it helps us to engage every single thing that happens in our life as a Dharma practice. So there are two main things that happen to us as human beings: good things that we like and bad things that we don't like. I don't know about you, there's very little indifference, right? It's either really good or really bad. And so mind training instructs us to pay attention to these feelings when they arise. And then when something good is happening, you try to key into the attitude, may all beings have good things like this. May all beings feel good. May all beings have food. May all beings have these wonderful things that we have. And that's it. That's all it does, is it just makes that aspiration. And then when bad things happen, we can, instead of like looking for somebody to blame or being angry, we can actually say, look, karma rises and falls. So right now, I'm on the downside of karma. Okay, fine. May nobody suffer like this ever again. May I and all beings be free from suffering. May we all become Buddhas. And by just engaging this kind of mindfulness, where you're mindful of how you feel, and then use how you feel to expand your compassion. To me, that's a great place to go. Because then, of the two main things that happen to us, things we like, great, we can use that. Things we don't like, great, we can use that too. So that nothing in our life goes to waste. So it's kind of like that. I don't know, did that address, or was there something I missed?
No, that addresses it.
That do it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this of course I'm going to make a little joke now because I can't resist. This is where I get to give a commercial for a project that Lama Tom and I are working on. In January, we're going to do January, February, and March. We're going to do 3 intensives. Only online. It'll be like Monday nights online. And we're going to do a shamatha intensive for 3 Mondays in January. We'll do a compassion meditation intensive for 3 Mondays in February. And then we'll do a Vajrayana intensive for 3 Mondays in March, just to give people a taste of what it's like to intensively practice for a 3-week period. Then we give everybody some time off, then we do it again, and then we give them time off and do it again. We just wanted to see, we just want to see if engaging intensively with something helps us to understand it and take hold. We don't know, it's just an experiment, but I love everything about the compassion practice. So it really helped change my life, so. Thank you, yeah, appreciate it. I just realized we've run over time, but thank you all for the questions, because this is, I love our talks. I appreciate you bringing who you are here and just and leaving it with us. So this is the part where we dedicate the goodness of the practice. So we can kind of take everything we've learned and make the aspiration that we can use it to be of benefit to ourselves and others. And we'll use the dedication of merit, and since we're running a little behind, we'll just do it in English, thinking we gather all the goodness and dedicate it to all beings. With the words, by this merit. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may we free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is. Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way. And all the bodhisattvas, that I may follow in their path. I completely dedicate all this virtue. All right. right, thank you. Thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. And we'll see you next time. I think I've got several in a row here, so thank you, and drive safely, everybody.